Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show Week 11 Waiver Wire Q&A. I'm Patrick Daugherty, joined by waivers guru Kyle Dvorchak. He's got his waiver wired live on the site, but he's got his waiver wired live in his mind as we come here to answer your questions and hopefully also useful in podcast form. We're going to hit on all the hot button players of the week. The button will be scorching, none hotter than it is for Audric Estime, Kyle. Clear cut ad of the week. Even though he's a week in terms of like ad of the week by week ad of the week standards, but he's still clearly the ad of the week this week. Why is Audric Estime, who we're telling people they got to get off the waiver wire?
I feel like he's a medium strength. He's not a dark roast coffee, but he's a medium strength coffee. Maybe it's because we have really been deprived for that breakout running back candidate, and we've just been getting, this wide receiver is getting more snaps, this wide receiver is getting more snaps. And we haven't gotten that with a young talent, maybe a talented running back. And Audric Estime goes out, sees just shy of half the team's snaps. He gets 14 of 17 backfield carries, and this has been coming for a long time in the sense of Javonte just is not cutting it. And Jaleel hasn't been particularly explosive either this year. So they just have not had an option. It's taken Estime some time. There's definitely been some bumps in the road, but they needed to try anything to make a change. And the fact that we get to make that bet on a rookie running back peaking late in the season, it's all you can ask for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Payton said it was going to happen. He had 11 more carries than any other Bronco, and second was Marvin Mims. He had 12 more carries than any other running back, Jaleel McLaughlin, and he had 13 more carries than Javonte Williams, who had 1. And so again, Sean Payton said it was going to happen. It happened. He said Monday it's going to continue to happen. Thankfully, one reason the waiver wire has felt kind of barren this year is because running backs are staying healthy somehow. Running backs are staying healthy.
Yeah, thank God. I'm happy all the early running backs are doing great. I hate it when the other team has a player get injured. It's been awesome, dude.
It's been flipped on its head where the running backs are staying healthy. The receivers are not. So running backs are just not coming available. Thankfully, this one is not via injury. It's been a while since someone getting like 60 to 70% of the carries has just come available. And Audric Estime has come available. He is the ad of the week. First question of the week is from weekly viewer Jerry Medina, who's just wondering if Chris Olave is droppable since he's landed on injury reserve. The answer is yes, Kyle, but maybe elaborate on why Chris Olave is droppable. And then Jerry wants to know if you should add Jacoby Myers or Cortland Sutton. But just address Olave first.
Yeah, as you said, they put him on IR. That puts him out for 4 weeks, which means you're not getting him back till the start of the fantasy playoffs, and that's if he comes back right away. But more so, the reporting has been very clear that this might be the last. He may have just taken his last snap in 2024. The team has nothing to play for. They have no reason to put his long-term health at risk. And right now, there is a serious risk of long-term issues that we're seeing with guys like him and Tua, where the concussions keep compounding. I believe this is his 4th documented concussion already. Fifth. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. And 2 of them have happened this year. They've been pretty serious looking concussions too, and they have nothing to play for. So I do think if I have to take a guess, I do think he's done for the year. Just because they have not, why would you play him again? If there is even the slimmest margin of them, we actually have a 10% chance of making the playoffs. We need to win out, and then these teams lose. You could see them having him play through this. There's just no hope of that happening.
There's not. The NFC is pretty jumbled up at the top, and we're like good teams are not in the playoffs right now, like the 49ers. So the Saints just, I guess unless Rizzy's got the Riz and he's the next Rich Bisaccia or Antonio Pierce, which he kind of does. He kind of has insane Bisaccia Pierce energy.
Absolutely.
I'll say, Darren Rizzi, but it's just not happening. And yeah, 2, like change is coming to New Orleans. I could see them just being whatever. We won't risk Chris Olave's health any further. We'll let maybe the next administration or next front office make this decision. So yeah, Chris Olave. I don't know though. Again, if he's healthy though, like it's the NFL, he's going to play. So I'm not saying it's 100% he won't play. It's probably like 64% he's not going to play though.
I was going to say 70. So I definitely think there's a small but notable number of times that he does come back, sort of relying on the reporting. I know like Ian Rappaport sort of just hinted at the idea of what would be the point of him coming back other than like not going out and having your team get embarrassed because he is really good. But I do think more often than not, he does not play a single snap this year. Even if he does come back, like this team sucks.
Diego Lopez real quick, wondering what should be the punishment for anyone who picks up Marquez Valdez-Scantling on the waiver wire. MVS, 30% of the way yesterday to his combined 2023-2024 yardage total. It was a trip. I will say, never quite understood why it was so hard to hit MVS for gain. I guess because you just stopped doing it after he dropped so many of them.
Yeah.
But MVS is a guy like feel like he should probably have more yardage. And Derek Carr is like, what if MVS got more yardage and he did it? He could at least be a matchup flipping wide receiver 5. Diego here wondering, as someone who is relying heavily on CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Garrett Wilson, and DJ Moore, how much of an anchor do you expect their team situation be to close out the fantasy season? Am I screwed? What's this exact question, Kyle? Can you make sense of this one to me?
Yeah, it's just saying with the Cowboys, Giants, I guess to a lesser degree, Jets, and to a very large degree, Bears, how much are our truly talented? I am sure all of these players are talented, but how much are our truly talented skill position players screwed by their lack of good quarterback play, lack of good coaching, lack of good offensive line, which is those excuses get scattered throughout these players. I think for everyone but DJ Moore, I actually feel okay. CD is those third, fourth, second, whatever best receiver in the NFL. I don't think he's going to produce as a top 3 option through the end of the season, but I'm still okay projecting him as a top 12 player. I kind of feel the same way about Neighbors and Garrett Wilson, frankly, because they have the combo of being so extremely talented and seeing so much of the offense. You don't quite have either of those things going for DJ Moore. He is good. He's really good. He's not as talented as CeeDee Lamb. Like, no, very few players are. I kind of think Malik Neighbors might already be better than him, and I think Garrett Wilson is a little better than him. But he also doesn't see such a large share of the pie in Chicago that he can overcome through sheer force of target volume alone. So DJ Moore actually would be concerned. The rest of these guys, I don't think it's like a sell low moment. I guess Tracy's not necessarily low, but I don't think we're selling out on these guys. DJ Moore, I actually think it's a problem.
It's a huge problem. They're playing the Packers, the Vikings, the Lions, the 49ers, the Vikings, the Lions. Those are their next 6 games. Like, you're staring at 0-6. Normally, we'd be happy about negative game script, but negative game script has been an absolute nightmare for Caleb Williams and the Bears offensive line, where it is getting harder to even envision DJ Moore as like a top 36 receiver. He'll probably stabilize in like the 30 to 36 range, but he's off wide receiver 2 probation. Like now he's on wide receiver 3 probation. And I don't know if we've seen how far the Bears have to fall. I mean, the quote good news is Shane Waldron is a dead man walking. I mean, maybe another game or 2 tops as Bears offensive coordinator. So someone else will get a crack at trying to solve this, but it could get worse before it gets better for DJ Moore. I agree with you on the other players looking a little better. Chad is wondering here, in a league where Jaden Daniels was his second quarterback and he still has a solid QB1, we sell high on Daniels considering his current value and an unfavorable schedule, or sell the other quarterback and hope the floor holds up? I mean, when I see a quote tough schedule with the Commanders, what I see dollar signs, Kyle, because I see Jaden Daniels actually having to try. Elaborate on why we're feeling this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Who is the other quarterback? Like, I've got this guy Jaden Daniels just sitting on my bench. I'm sure like Daniels wasn't that expensive, so it's a very reasonable spot to find yourself in. But like, there are very few quarterbacks I am starting over Jaden Daniels on a weekly basis, and I get it. Like, we haven't quite gotten there, especially when they had 3, I believe, rushing touchdowns last week. But the offense has been absolutely humming. And to your point, they've had a pretty solid defense this year after having a dreadful defense, especially over the second half of last year. And part of the problem for Jaden Daniels has been low yardage totals, low attempt totals, taking down what has been one of the most, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the most efficient rookie season ever. I know he was crushing everyone over the past decade, and it's hard to find efficiency data going back. But truly, one of the most talented quarterbacks, one of the most efficient quarterbacks, just hasn't quite gotten there on volume. Still has a top 6, 7-ish floor because of how much he runs. But the way to get to the ceiling games where we're getting Lamar Jackson as just QB1 every week, rank him QB1 overall, that is because his defense sucks and every game they play is freaking awesome. Commanders games in general aren't that awesome. So if he gets a harder schedule in terms of the opposing offense is actually putting up points, good. Please do more of that.
Yeah, please. Like, again, I've been waiting for this Commander schedule to get hard. We need them to try. And it's not that it's the Eagles. It is a short week. We'll see how good the Eagles defense really is. They've been improving.
They're even not like special in the spreadsheets. They're like, I don't know, 10th or 12th or something. I guess last week is going to completely ruin their numbers because they became the best defense ever. When you play Cooper Rush, you get to do that. So, but they're not that. I'm not worried at all. Like, there are very few defenses with a player as good as Jaden Daniels that worry me. Vikings, actually, sure. They're really, really good. And Eagles, who cares?
No, Eagles, and then it's the Cowboys. which again, we're running the same problem. Cowboys aren't good enough. That's actually worse than if they were good. Then it's the Titans, who have been good on a per play basis. I just still have a sneaking suspicion it's because teams never need to pass against the Titans. So when they do it, they're not very effective at it. Then it's bye week. Then it's the Saints. Then it's the Eagles again, Falcons, Cowboys again. It's honestly, not trying to undermine you, Chad. It's actually not even that difficult of a schedule.
Yeah, that's good.
Diego, appreciate you translating the question. Yeah, sorry, Diego, my brain was malfunctioning there. We got people trying to get to the bottom of this DJ Moore situation. Luis wants to know, DJ Moore, Romeo Dobbs, rest of season. A serious question, frowny face. I feel your pain, Luis. It's a legit question. I'm not even entirely sure how I'd answer it, so I'm going to ask Mr. Kyle Dvorchak to answer it.
I guess I'd still go DJ Moore because I don't think Dobbs is the first. Actually, know what? Go Dobbs. Like, dude, this Chicago team is screwed. Just go Dobbs.
Yeah, and Dobbs, he has a defined role. It's an offense whose best days, I think, are ahead of it. Like, the Packers have been so disjointed, so hard for them to get in rhythm with the Jordan Love injuries. They finally have the bye week. Hopefully he's something resembling healthy. And they just love Dobbs in the downish field role. They love him in the end zone. And so, yeah, what can you hang your hat on with DJ Moore right now? The schedule is like almost comically brutal. So it's just like, how do they solve their offensive line issues? How do they solve the quarterback confidence issues? How do they solve the low volume issues where it's low volume and you're fighting with a first round receiver and like a Hall of Fame level almost slot man? So it's just really, really the toughest possible sledding for my guy too, DJ Moore. He's being treated very unfairly, DJ Moore. But Billy would like to know opinion on a trade. He acquired King Henry, Derrick Henry, gave up Drake London, Josh Downs, Jake Ferguson, King's ransom, but he has Neighbors, Pearsall, and Cup. I like this trade, 3-for-1. Even with London in there, where Henry's the best player, do you agree, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a 2-for-1. Like, who cares if you gave up Jake Ferguson? Like, you can find Mike Gesicki's on the waiver wire every other week. So you gave up a really good wide receiver 1 and a pretty good wide receiver 2, but you got the, at worst, 4th best fantasy back over the final stretch of the season.
I'll say 5th, but yeah, at the absolute worst, 5th.
Who am I?
Well, it's because it's Saquon, Bijan, Christian McCaffrey. That's 3. I guess it is that 4th. I thought there was a 4th.
You could throw Brees in there, but like,
no,
I would just take Henry, man.
Yeah. So I will say, Billy, you're giving up actual value. Like, this isn't one of those trades like, I'm ripping them off. Like, you're giving up like a low end wide receiver 1, a really legit wide receiver 3, and even Ferguson is still a legit tight end 1, to be honest. Low end.
Well, whatever. Sure.
But you won the deal. You're giving up actual value, but you won the deal. Diego wondering order of preference between Ricky Pearsall, Josh Downs, Ladd McConkey. My gut is Downs, McConkey, Pearsall. What is yours, Kyle?
That was mine too. I had the exact same order. Downs is just a proven like superstar level target earner. And his quarterback's, trying and throwing a lot. He's not very good, but he's on a at least volume-based passing attack in which he is the centerpiece of it. That's really good. And he's also really talented, obviously. So I just, always money in the banana stand. Just take the money and run with Josh Downs. And McConkey and Pearsall in very similar spots, but McConkey is his team's wide receiver 1, whereas Pearsall is maybe his wide receiver 2, but maybe more so like his team's wide receiver 3.
He's the wide receiver 3, unfortunately. I think clearly the wide receiver 3, where I just think he's like kind of hard capped at 5 to 7 targets, which is not a terrible target ceiling. He could still maybe fight into like low end wide receiver 3 relevance. Pearsall seems like more like a wide receiver 4 right now, whereas Downs is a wide receiver 2. Depending on what they do at quarterback. McConkey is a clear wide receiver 3, and Pearsall is kind of more of a wide receiver 4. Brett wanting to know, so we talked about Audric Estime to begin the show. Do we finally cut bait on Javonte Williams? Drop or hold Mr. Javonte?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely just drop him. I mean, it's like, what is going to happen? What's the worst case scenario that you drop?
It's true. It is true. You
like Estime fumbles and they bench him again. Totally realistic. He's fumbled a few times this year and he's been banged up this year. So maybe Estime's hurt and they bench him again. You get 14 weekly touches that are some of the most inefficient you'll find. Maybe Javonte PPR scams his way back into a 14 fantasy point day, but I just don't see what the bad outcome is when you're dropping Javonte.
Yeah, it's just It's a name brand. It's very hard to cut
I know.
name brands, but the offense just isn't good enough. It's the second time he almost already got benched before. Now it's happening for real. Yeah, he is a guy where you can tell yourself in a perfect world you would hold. The world is getting less perfect, as you may have heard, and buys mounting. Injuries will start to mount even more. Just not going to be able to hold Mr. Javonte. Millie wondering. Off the top of your head, Kyle, who's someone under 50% rostered that you might want to add to your bench because they'll have multiple good matchups, a good streaming QB. We're in like the Russell Wilson, the Jameis Winston, maybe the Bo Nix, maybe Geno Smith territory. A lot of it's schedule dependent. If you're streaming quarterbacks, you should just go week to week is really the answer. But who off the top of your head strikes you as someone you'd like to have on your bench as a QB2, let's say?
It's Bo Nix. I mean, I have to check his schedule. He did just get one Chiefs game out of the way, but he's a quarterback who has been improving over the second half of the first 2 months of the season pretty drastically. He's really not good through a month of football. He's been about league average, percolating right around that area as just a passer of the football over the past month or so. And that's on top of the fact that he's on pace for 600 or 700 rushing yards. He's getting rushing touchdowns. So if you need someone where you're forced to play them for the next month straight, I think he still has his buy up. But that aside, if you're forced to just play the same quarterback over and over again, I'll take the decent passer with a really good rushing floor as opposed to trying to thread the needle with someone like Russell Wilson, who has been really efficient so far, but he doesn't have a rushing floor and he doesn't have a volume-based floor. So there's a lot of pitfalls on the road for him still.
I mean, Russ has kind of always been like an inside straight quarterback, whereas like Russ can't keep getting away with it, but he really can't keep getting away with it. And
this time is different.
This time,
and also we saw him stop getting away for it for a good 2 years.
Yes. What about Baker Mayfield, who is putting up humongous?
He's even close to 50%.
Well, yeah, here's the deal though. He's been struggling. Now they're on bye. He's going to get dropped a lot. Mike Evans, though, probably coming back in week 12. They're facing the Giants. Would you feel good about rostering Baker Mayfield still for the stretch run? He'll probably be one of the most dropped players of the week this week, I bet.
Yeah, that's true. He probably will be. He got really high up there after he was like the QB2 through almost 2 months of football. Yeah, I feel all right about him. I think losing Chris Godwin's going to be a pretty massive blow to the team, but he's played really well this year. He's not a zero as a runner, and getting Mike Evans back will mean a ton for this team, which is just trotting out CFL, XFL level wide receiver core right now. Mike Evans won't change the entire dynamic. They're still going to be trotting out two not particularly enticing options, but the upgrade of, Trey Palmer or Raheem Jarrett to Mike Evans is really going to mean a lot.
Elisha needs a tight end streamer for week 11. Dawson Knox against the Chiefs, assuming Dalton Kincaid sits with his knee injury. Pat Freiermuth against the Ravens' awful defense. Dalton Schultz, who never does anything ever, against the Dallas Cowboys. Or Mike Gesicki will be kind of dependent on T. Higgins' health against the Chargers. So, and two, just like, would you be excited at all about Dawson Knox as a streamer this week for really banged up Bills receiver skill core?
I mean, I guess if you told me Keon Coleman's out again, and obviously Dalton Kincaid's out again.
Keon Coleman is out again, I believe it sounds like. I think they already ruled him out today. Yeah,
that's not good for him.
Not great.
And then Amari Cooper is also out. At that point, I would say there are only so many options. I know they're not going to throw a ton. I would probably rank him at lowest at the tight end 14, but you could convince me that you play every snap with Josh Allen, your touchdown odds are high, you're the tight end 12 this week. But I had to make 3 conditional ifs to make sure that's the case, because if Amari Cooper's back, for instance, I don't trust Knox as a target earner. That's never been what he is. So that's a conditional one. Another conditional one is Mike Gesicki. If Teagan's out, he is the clear answer here. He has dominated targets, a 19 or 20% target share, elite fantasy production in games T. Higgins hasn't played. He essentially becomes their number 2 receiver when Higgins is out. But that's another one where you have to sort of gauge your risk of getting stuck without anyone. I think it's fine to just take Mike Gesicki. If somehow T. Higgins plays football this week, which he doesn't seem to do much anymore, roll your dice with a touchdown bet if all of these guys get taken on the wire.
Yeah, just add Will Dissly or something.
Yeah, exactly. I have Will Dissly in the waiver wire column.
Yeah, there you go. Luis, we're talking about how there's running back has been really, really tough to find any valuable assets. He has an open roster spot. Are we stashing Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, or Mr. Marshawn Lloyd, who appears he's finally coming back for the Packers this week?
I guess I'd probably go Jalen Wright. He's got 2 paths to getting touches, which is the 2 running backs ahead of him getting injured. Both of those running backs have struggled with injuries. Blake Corum is also one player. Actually, I don't know if Blake Corum is one player away from getting a large workload.
Ronnie Rivers season.
I know. So I would go Jalen Wright, and then I'd probably take Lloyd over Corum even. Yeah, Wright's kind of a clear answer between the three, though.
Corum could end up being almost a 1-for-1, but there's just fairly strong signs, as you alluded to, that he won't be a 1-for-1 replacement were Kyron to get hurt.
I would still rank him as an RB2 pretty immediately if Kyron goes down. But if in August we had this conversation, I'd be like, well, of course, he's a top 5 running back if Kyron goes down. And I don't feel that confident in his 1-for-1 ability.
I will say the closest maybe to standalone value could be Marshawn Lloyd, but it's pretty tough when you're a rookie and you've barely played for 2 months. I could see a guy that they maybe wanted to get involved early in the season that they just don't want to anymore, or that, they're just not going to force the issue at this point. But Marshawn Lloyd might still have the best path to standalone value there. I do agree the stash is Jalen Wright, because like you said, he's got 2 different paths. 2 guys in front of him, and Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, who get hurt a lot. Praying to God, not on Monday night. Achane keeping the bank examiner at bay. Cesar Rivera, Cesar, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Should he let go Caleb Williams for Derek Carr? And why is the answer yes, Kyle?
I mean, I guess it is.
Or is it? Is it? I actually don't know.
No, I think it is yes. But I don't want to support Derek Carr too much, but Caleb Williams is just playing outright dreadful. He's killing his team with sacks. He's killing his team with inaccuracies. And they just look completely dysfunctional. It's not like he's making the best of a bad situation. It isn't working. He's making what is not that awful of a situation. Line's really bad. Pass catchers are really good.
It's an awful situation. Don't sell it short at this point.
I don't know. DJ
it's all feeding.
It's
such a poorly designed offense and such a poorly blocked offense where the problems are compounding and feeding off each other and getting worse instead of getting better, basically.
Definitely. I do think he's making it a lot worse in his own right, where I guess Derek Carr somehow making the best of also bad situation with a poor offensive line. And I said, who was I talking about earlier? Oh, Bucks. I was like, oh, Bucks trotting out a CFL level of receiving core. This freaking Saints team getting away with it with this truly, I think, is the worst receiving core I've seen in a single week in a long time.
It was better than the Bucks is honestly just by the sheer virtue of having MVS. I really hate. I'm not trying to be contrarian, but the Bucks trotted out, man, was like
they had Sterling Shepard.
This can't happen.
There's no.
They had the ghost of Sterling Shepard.
Oh yeah, but we've got prime MVS storming down the field.
What the hell happened to Tipton season, man? What happened?
We're all looking for the guy who did this. There's no way to say what happened to this like UDFA.
What happened to Tipton season? FMP 823 as who's Jordan Brooks? Jonathan Brooks, I believe, is probably what they mean.
Yeah, Jordan Brooks is the linebacker.
The linebacker. Jonathan Brooks, Jordan Mason, Tyler Edgier, Bucky Irving, Javonte Williams, and B-Rob. Been tough for him the past few weeks. Stay put or get someone like Braylon Allen or Ray Davis, basically swapping out any of these guys for the perennial waiver wire fodder of Braylon Allen or Ray Davis, Kyle.
Javonte, I assume, is who we're referencing here. And yes, you can. I mean, he's basically in the same spot as a Braylon Allen or a Ray Davis. Oh, something goes awry ahead of him on the depth chart. Maybe he can crack back into the starting rotation for Javonte. But right now, he is miles from fantasy relevancy with how he was used last week. And I don't feel good about what happens when he takes over, if anything happens to Esme. I do feel very good that Braylon Allen will be something. Ray Davis, we've seen it already, will be something if something happens to the starter. So I would pretty much instantly swap out Javonte for, which do you have a preference, Allen or Davis?
Probably just Ray Davis, just the better team. Yeah. Maybe a better, quote, standalone role at this point, even though the touches are probably still more for Braylon. It's more about the situation for Ray Davis. And the Bills have several times in the past few years, like once it starts getting cold, once it starts snowing like every day in Buffalo, they start running a lot more in the second half of the season. I think it's Ray by a whisker, basically. This Jets team, man, it's so over. It's like hard to even put into words how over it is. Man. So. I honestly, like, whatever. Aaron Rodgers become a lightning rod. I was rooting for the Jets because I liked the story. I liked the last gunslinger story and all that. And I've been like very depressed by what has happened with the Jets.
I started rooting against them the moment they fired Salah. Did nothing wrong. Treated, as you would say, it's treated very badly.
Very unfair. And their defense has utterly fallen apart. Now, we're not going to laugh at RJ for this question. We're not laughing at RJ. Things get really tough in 2 QB Superflex leagues. He has Trevor Lawrence. He picked up Mac Jones, McCorkle. Is Mac a reliable QB2 in a Superflex this week? Or should we be looking to make a trade The Jaguars have the Lions, and then they're on bye. Probably make a trade season, Kyle, but what do you say?
Buddy, you are screwed. Get preparing for the 2025 season. Mac Jones is terrible. Look, all this talk about, there's no difference between Trevor and Mac that I heard on the Thursday show. God, Mac Jones is awful. He got a rushing
poorly. It was the Vikings. I
know. No, that was a tough matchup. But it ain't getting any better for Mac Jones. He doesn't have the physical tools. He doesn't have the mental tools. He's not going to rush in a touchdown probably at any point again this year. He's not at all a reliable QB2. He's at the point where you actually have to consider if you play a non-quarterback in the super flex, which is so rare. There's very few quarterbacks that fit that bill, and he is one of them.
I had Trevor. I'm in a super flex with Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and Jameis Winston. And of course, Winston's bye happened to coincide with my first quarterback injury. It's our redraft league where I've been rampaging, Kyle, and I had to play Dallas Goedert in the super flex. And I'll let you guess who just lost for only the second time all year.
I'm getting smoked in that league. Actually, I'm coming alive right as my season completely ended. Like I have no chance to make the playoffs, and I'm really getting hot right now.
It's a classic fantasy football move. The Rolfty. I was wondering if Dalton Kincaid droppable. Looks like on the wrong side of questionable this week. Then on bye in week 12, has not exceeded 52 yards all season. We know in a perfect world you're probably keeping Dalton Kincaid, but is it kind of like a Javonte Williams type situation where it's like, what are you really missing out on when you drop him? Or do you have a counter take on dropping Dalton Kincaid, Kyle?
No, I think he's more of a priority to hold than Javonte, but that's not saying a lot. I was telling, we're cutting Javonte for anyone at this point. I do think it's in an ideal world, you would love to be able to hold on Dalton Kincaid. Low end tight end 1, but do you need to roster a low end tight end 1 getting probably 0 this week, obviously 0 for the bye after that, and coming back to average 9 PPR points or whatever? You do not need to hold that player. If you have to make a drop to get someone like Estime, say you're down bad at running back and an Estime's out there, I would just drop Kincaid for him.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's just like, what is the case for Dalton? Dalton Kincaid's in like the dreaded situation where how could this guy's season get better? It's the player has to get better. There's like no external factors really at this point that could make him better. He just has to play better. And that's always a tough bet to make. Diego, talking about how the Darnolding is upon us, back-to-back multi-interception starts, just a second scoreless start of the season on Sunday, back-to-back stink bombs against really bad defenses in the Colts and Jaguars, Kyle. Is it time to move on for Sam Darnold, for someone like Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa? Jags, man, that was just a really bad showing for Sam Darnold yesterday. What are we telling Diego?
Yeah, I'd be pretty compelled to move on for either of these players. We'll get tonight to see what Tua looks like. Tua's been elite since coming back, and all the efficiency metrics, it's been very manicured, but like that's always been who he is. Right now, I guess I haven't checked since Sunday, but before, heading into week 10, he was 4th in completion percent over expected, 4th in EPA per play since coming back, small sample, but he just wasn't getting the big explosive gains or gains. Like neither of those things were happening. We get tonight to check it out, but I do think there's a lot of stuff bubbling under the surface saying that he's executing well, which is all we've ever said of him. So I don't think that's that much different than what it used to be. I could see us taking him over Darnold from here on out, and Herbert definitely. I think that one's kind of a clear move to make.
Yeah, I think Herbert he's passed Sam Darnold. It was a little unclear. They did go a little more run heavy again this weekend, but
the Titans,
Titans, supposedly a tough pass defense, a game that they couldn't lose. Essentially, the Chargers, the Chargers pass defense still seems like it's rounding. The Chargers passing offense still seems like it's rounding in form. Big dog. He's looking at a package, Jonathan Taylor, T. Higgins, and Tyrone Tracy in a trade. He's wondering who he could get. You got to get someone really big is all I was going to say. Like Taylor and Tracy, that's like real trade capital at this point. People become leery of like 3-for-1s, 2-for-1s. But this is one where like you're not just like throwing in like fillers. Like those are like all pretty elite assets. Except for T. Higgins kind of a damaged, stranded asset at this point. But right, Kyle, like if you're trading Jonathan Taylor and Tyrone Tracy, you need to be thinking like top 5 running back, I would say.
I assume we're trading these players. Well, yeah, top 5 running back or receiver. I wasn't sure if we didn't need all the running backs here. Either way, that was my exact thought. Is Jonathan Taylor, he's not quite in that top 5. He's probably in top 10, top 12 still, like RB1 mix heading forward. And Tyrone Tracy really isn't that far off either. Offenses, I guess, probably worse, though it's not like the Colts are good right now. Both extremely talented and good volume running backs. Running back 10 to 16 for both of them. And T. Higgins, who knows when he comes back, but he's really good when he plays. He was like out targeting and out air yarding Jamar Chase
which is until the stupid
point in which he got hurt.
It's just dumb. It really is just like every time T. Higgins gets hurt, like Jamar Chase instantly becomes probably better than Justin Jefferson. Like
yeah, probably.
It's like a total misallocation of resources. It's almost like a Bijan Tyler Algier thing. Like, dude, we get it. It's annoying that like T. Higgins is actually good. And, like you can't really feature him, and it's like annoying to not be able to feature an actually good player. But guess who's way better? The other guy. And you just cannot. They give T just way too many targets. It's like it's been driving me crazy for years, but it's like more evident than ever. They've got to give a bigger target share to Jamar Chase. Is Trey Benson becoming a priority running back stash? We talk about how barren it is at running back, Kyle. He's getting weekly touches, but James Conner's not fully going away, though. What are we telling people about Trey Benson?
I mean, they have absolutely smoked their last two opponents, and a good chunk of his carries came late in the game. They still came with the starters. They actually both in each of their past two games, Clayton Tune has gotten snaps. The backup quarterback has gotten snaps. And Amari DiMercato has been the one out there in what is the garbagest of garbage time. But we're still getting the overall rushing numbers for the team juiced by blowing out their past two opponents. And then Trey Benson gets a little extra bit of that pie because he comes in late for cleanup adjacent duty. So I still don't think you can start him. I think they're on bye this week. So I still don't think you can start him this week or the week after that, because I don't think they're just going to continually blow out every one of their opponents. But you do have to give some credit to a rookie running back playing well and seeing his touch totals peak as we get about just over halfway through the season. That's the trajectory we should also expect young players to be on. So I think he's a good ad, but I do not think he approaches the Audric Estime priority out of the week type status.
He does not. By the way, get your questions in. First time all season, we're running a little low on questions. You're talking about Trey Benson, by the way. Had me think about Kyler. Like, is Kyler finally like proved it? Kyle, like, is he like not just in the top 10, but is he starting to push for like top 5 weekly quarterback? Because the floor and ceiling have both really been shored up in recent weeks. And the guy who still seemed like he was going to be frustratingly inconsistent, Kyler, just seems like – is Kyler basically someone we're going to bench at this point? Because the past few weeks, he's been getting ranked outside the top 12 fairly often, including against the Jets. Is Kyler to the point where you consider him unbenchable, though?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess maybe the one scenario in which I actually have one league where I face this every single week is Jaden Daniels, because there are very few quarterbacks who you are playing versus Kyler who could you could realistically have both of them and have the decision. Like, you're not going to have Kyler versus Josh Allen unless you drafted really weird. So yeah, almost every scenario, I do think Kyler's just unbenchable. We'll still get some bust weeks for sure. But he's playing with both, like you said, a high enough rushing floor because that's who he is, and a high enough ceiling as a passer that, yeah, you can't really bench him with, I think, Daniels being the lone realistic exception.
Millie wondering, still has quarterback on the brain. Would you drop Blake Corum for a backup quarterback? Jameis Winston, someone you might stream occasionally. Or would you drop another quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, for Winston? Who would you rather roster the second half of the season? That actually is kind of an interesting question. Aaron Rodgers or Jameis Winston? Rodgers has better weapons. Browns have a somewhat rough schedule. Winston does come off bye, though, against the Saints. Who would you rather roster, Aaron Rodgers or Jameis Winston rest of season?
I'll still go with Rodgers. Like last week, not entirely aside, but even looking at last week in the context of the other games they played before that, the offenses looked better with Devontae Adams in it than without. Like, you can see it very clearly when you look at the box scores of the players around him as well. I think the biggest concern, frankly, is that they just aren't playing at the end of the season, because they truly are within a week or two, or maybe 3 technically, going to be, for all practical purposes, eliminated from the playoff contention entirely. I'm sure the model's well, actually they have a 10% chance now. We'll hit 0 soon enough. And do they keep playing him through that? I certainly wouldn't if I was in charge of the team in some fashion. But the Winston experience, we're getting mostly the bad stuff from the Winston experience so far. So
1 for 1. He went one. Even the good start, he had some drop picks, but it was a pretty good start.
He had 3, and 2 of them were terrible.
They got to catch him. And they did not. But yeah, the Rodgers, he's in the Favre zone. He's in the Manning zone, where it just seems like a legend on his second team who's not going to finish the season. This is kind of becoming an inescapable conclusion. Like, dude, he is getting like annihilated. Rodgers, like the guy is not moving well. He's taking he's basically going to the tent once a week, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And like, how much longer is he going to fight through that when they're eliminated from, they had to win that game just so unbelievably bad yesterday. And not as bad as they needed to win the Patriots game. But losing both those games, the math just becomes almost impossible for the Jets. And Rodgers will be benched at some point, I think. Not if he's healthy, but I just think he's going to have an injury he can't play through basically soon enough. Chad is wondering about PPR scams rest of season. Wan'Dale Robinson, Devon Belay from the Denver Broncos, or I guess that's probably Curtis Samuel.
Took me a second, but it definitely is.
For the Bills, is it still Wan'Dale? Rank Wan'Dale, Devon, and Curtis Samuel, Kyle.
Yeah, it's still Wan'Dale. I mean, he is what he is at this point. He is truly the epitome of a PPR scam, but he's earning a lot of targets. And I think even once, probably as this person points out, Drew Lock takes over, target earning is an ability, even if, your quarterback's tendencies change. And it's not like, oh, they're going to finally shift to a Jalen Hyatt or a Darius Slayton focused offense. Those guys are role players in their own right. Their role will be a little more emphasized with Drew Lock. But I think if you just want to bank 8 PPR points, the move is still Wan'Dale.
Do you like Devon Belay at all, by the way?
I kind of do. I didn't think he was a good prospect, but he was really impressive in camp. He's done a good job earning targets when he gets on the field. If you choose one of these players to be like, oh man, he really popped off at the end of the season, I actually would go with Belay. But if I just think who scores more points, like who has a better median projection, it is Wan'Dale.
Who do you think will score more PPR points the rest of the season? DeMario Pop Douglas or Kayshon Boutte in New England?
I'll go Pop Douglas, but I don't like that you're asking me this.
I think it's honestly, I think it is Boutte, to be honest.
It's not like that's not a wrong take.
He's been on six or 7 targets, like 3 or 4 games in a row now. I'm not sure if he's good, but
I don't think so. But
seems pretty clear that Pop Douglas just is not good. We were running a little low on questions. We've got an infusion of questions, but please keep the questions coming. Chad is wondering, Brian Thomas Jr. rest of season. Things have gotten very grim the past 2 weeks. It's probably another Mac Jones game. Then it's the bye for the Jaguars. It's kind of like a set and forget wide receiver 2 dream done. Or do we just need to get through these next 2 weeks and maybe he's going to help us during the playoffs? What is the outlook for BTJ down the stretch?
I think it's basically rigor mortis if Trevor Lawrence doesn't come back. Mac Jones is just terrible, and he throws a bad deep ball, and that's what Brian Thomas was so good at. In an era where we can't generate explosive plays, he is too big and too fast to not continuously generate explosive plays, except when you have Mac Jones as your quarterback. And I'm sure there are others who just cannot get the job done. And they're in a jet zone of, we're going to be calling it. Like, we're going to call the election on this team making the playoffs within 2. Like, they're going to lose next week with Mac Jones, then they get to bye. What would be the point of trotting out Trevor Lawrence again? Like, they can't even be like, he's a young quarterback, we need to evaluate him. They just signed him. Like,
well, the point is that it's the NFL. You're paid to play. And like, they maybe do think like this is a really rough stretch, like a kind of like growing pains experience, like Trevor needs to work through. I do think if Trevor's healthy, he will play. I actually don't think they'll just pull the plug on Trevor. Teams do that pretty infrequently, to be honest. Games are so precious. You don't only get so many games in your career. But
I also I wouldn't be surprised if not. It's probably likely that Trevor has to undergo surgery at some point. Like we had,
if that's the case, then it's over. Like
I think it was Jay Gruden on like the on the Underdog Network tweeted that it had like already happened. He's like, yep, it's happening. And then Ian Rappaport quotes him. He's like, easy, buddy, hasn't happened yet. But like we are at that point where that is certainly in the conversation. And if it has to happen, if the doctors determine at some point you will need it, whether it's tomorrow or 2 months from now, you would want to, as a team, start his recovery early. I think if Trevor comes back, like he does one thing, he's done one thing really well this year. And he's like Brian Thomas down there somewhere and he hits him. If Trevor comes back, I will just immediately be like, yep, BTJ wide receiver 18. But that it's very conditional. That's the only way. Quickly,
Big Dog, who's trying to trade his guys earlier, said he tried getting Kamara and DK Metcalf for Taylor, Higgins, and Tracy, but the guy thought he was scamming. And like, I don't know, you might be losing that trade, Big Dog. Like, maybe not. It's a very fair trade, though. Like, that is not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not to tell your guy that you're not scamming him. Lucas is wondering if he should trade Malik Neighbors for CeeDee Lamb. 2 kind of, I used the phrase earlier, stranded assets. Neighbors and Lamb, both kind of stranded assets. Would you want to turn the rookie at least into the veteran who might fare better in his unideal situation?
I don't know if he will. I mean, I think Cooper Rush is probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. Mac Jones certainly gave him a run for his money, but like Jones had some brief, fleeting game managerial moments. I guess Cooper Rush did a few years ago as well. But I feel better about whatever the tandem is of Daniel Jones and Drew Lock by a somewhat meaningful amount than Cooper Rush. So I think I will take Neighbors.
I think I'll take CeeDee Lamb because Neighbors has not been the same since his concussion.
Maybe,
and got the concussion eval yesterday again. I think in these situations, it's better usually to trust a veteran who's just going to be savvy and like figure it out kind of. Not really a perfect comparison, but like Garrett Wilson last year, didn't score touchdowns, so basically never stopped producing. I think CeeDee Lamb can maybe Garrett Wilson it. It is very close. You're right. The Giants quarterback situation somehow is better. So like that is, I won't debate that fact. I do wonder if this may be, I'd rather have the veteran, but it is very, very, very close. We have someone else done with the Sam Darnold experience. Jay is moving on from Sam Darnold. Do we like Geno as a potential Sam Darnold upgrade, or is he maybe too frustrating as well? Who, in a vacuum, do you want in your roster rest of season, Sam Darnold or Geno Smith?
I still think I'll go Sam Darnold. Geno Smith's also not good, man. Like
he's not. I think he's better than Sam Darnold, though. Just to be frank,
maybe.
I'm going Geno. I'll say just
that's fine. You're more confident than I am, so I'll lean your way.
Like comparable weapons, not better because he doesn't have Justin Jefferson. A better approach. I do wonder if the Seahawks coming out of their bye might totally change their offensive approach and go way more run heavy. But I think Darnold's floor is a lot lower than Geno's floor. Darnold's ceiling is very similar. Darnold seems like he might be falling through his floor, and I'm not really so sure on Mr. Geno Smith. RJ wondering on adding Alec Pierce to his bench for desperation weeks. His big booms are tempting. I got to be honest. I know every time we talk about Alec Pierce, like we scored a 45-yard touchdown in garbage time. Maybe they should try to involve Alec Pierce before garbage time, who somehow every single week scores a 52-yard touchdown when the game is over. Maybe try to do that earlier in the game would be my advice.
He was scoring them early in the game when Anthony Richardson was under there, and then something happened.
That's right. Do you like Alec Pierce on the bench, or is it just too volatile? Not just a low floor. He has a 0-point floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Like literal 0-point floor. And I think we are concerned with his role when Michael Pittman comes back. The when being, I truly just don't know. There's like no way he should have been playing through this back injury in the first place. So it does feel precarious, the situation he's in. But he's out there running all the routes. He is genuinely a good field stretcher. I put him in the waiver wire column, and I said basically the same thing. If your choices are like, does Mason Tipton play football? He could run 100% of the routes, or I think he ran like 60% of the routes last week. These guys where I guess maybe their median is a little bit of a better projection, or hey, take an upside swing and maybe you get 17 points. I think he's not a bad ad. He's not anything special. He's not a guy who I'd bid more than like $8 of fab on, but he's not a bad bench stash. He's
a good guy. He's a good break glass in case of emergency option because he always has that in the repertoire. Blake is saying we're ignoring him. Blake, I was ignoring you because it's tough. We can't really answer Monday evening only questions because this goes out on our podcast feed. But Blake desperately wants to know if we should start a questionable Tirico Hill and risk a re-injury or Jonnu Smith. I'm still going Tirico. One drive of Tirico Hill is probably going to be better than a whole game of Jonnu Smith. Do you agree?
Yep, that was my thought too. I mean, I think basically weighing like their median projection is so much better for Tirico Hill, and then you move it down by a pretty good chunk based on the injury, and you still find yourself at Tirico Hill has a better shot at scoring 5 points.
Is John Brooks anything more than a handcuff in Dynasty with Chuba extended and continuing to dominate? Even with Brooks active, Brooks actually has not been active yet. Now they're on bye this week. How does the Chuba Hubbard extension complicate Jonathan Brooks' case in Dynasty, where it's kind of early to be pessimistic about a guy who's the number one back taken in his draft class, but not a normal organization. Chuba extended. What does the Chuba extension mean for John Brooks in Dynasty?
Yeah, it's like the first time in a while it's felt Jover for a running back who did not get injured and has not played a snap yet. Typically when those things happen, you're like, well, it's all upside from here, baby. and I mean, I do think we tend to be very myopic with these things. We're like, well, this is how the backfield is today. There's no way it could change. And if Jonathan Brooks is truly a special difference-making player, those players tend to just rise to the top, whether or not there is another good player on their team. So I would not say at all he's a handcuff, but I definitely feel way worse about him than I did a month ago.
Chuba at worst is now like a Tyler Algier at bet. Like at the bare minimum, Chuba's a Tyler Algier style obstacle for Jonathan Brooks. So that part is very concerning. I know, man. What a horrible, horrible dynasty league development. Like we are talking horrible. It's extremely unfortunate.
Yeah, man. It's not been fun.
Not a good organization. Chad wondering, is Mike Evans and Nico Collins in a 10-team league? Thoughts on trading Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson for Neighbors and Mr. Jay Jettis, Justin Jefferson? I think I'm smashing except there, right, Kyle?
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, Chad. Thankfully, it's an easy question. That's good. Do the trade because you're still pretty set at running back. We have any more? Diego wondering, Kyler's bye. Drake May against the Rams, Geno against the 49ers. I think I know where you're going to go, but what are you going to say, Kyle?
You better believe you know where I'm going to go. Drake May, baby.
Even though his best receiver
whatever garbage you're going to say, even though that thing, which I heard you say it, and it's not good. I'd love for his best receiver to be someone other than Kayshon Boutte. But with that being said, doesn't even need to throw the football. He's a very good runner. He also gets the Rams matchup is really strong for opposing quarterbacks. Yeah, Drake May.
Do you like keeping Mr. Anthony Richardson on the bench?
And not unless it's super flex. I would not at all.
Yeah. Hope for Dobbs. Yeah, we have hope for Dobbs. Over under wide receiver 35.5, aka wide receiver 3 for Romeo Dobbs rest of season, Kyle.
Under in the positive way, like he'll finish in the low 30s or high 20s.
I think Romeo Dobbs is in that 30 to 36 range. Don't get your hopes on higher. It's gonna be a lot of 3 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. That is useful, though. Almost done. Chad wondering, Jatavian Sanders, top 7 tight end rest of season. That seems aspirational, I'd like to say. Let's say tight end 1, though, top 12.
No,
for Jatavian Sanders.
We're not taking like maybe he goes out and continues to grow this role, but it's difficult to say that his role can expand when we should also expect someone like Xavier Legette's role to expand, when Jalen Coker's role is already expanding on an offense that is going to be at its very best modest efficiency and low volume, which is to say what we saw last week. They didn't throw a lot. They frankly weren't that good at it, but they were better than the previous Bryce Young starts. That is absolutely true. But that was the good scenario. That was a best game possible for Bryce Young. And obviously Sanders ends up getting in the end zone there. But without that touchdown, I'm looking at the players I have to blurb at the end of the game. I was like, I guess I'll blurb Jatavian. And of course he scores, so I'm definitely blurbing him.
The Bryce Young 2 good games have featured like 30 total completions. That tells you all you really need to know. Cam is wondering hope for Jalen McMillan. The answer, of course, is no. But if you were looking for hope, Kyle, it is the post-bye rookie bump. None of these other guys are doing anything. Any realistic expectations for Jalen McMillan, who there'll be less pressure on him with Mike Evans back, hopefully in week 12. Any reason to hold on to Jalen McMillan in 12-team redraft leagues with Mike Evans' impending return?
Not a ton of reason to hold on to him, but I actually think you made a somewhat compelling argument that the post-bye rookie bump is a legitimate thing, that as these players get more experience and then they get a potential install week, we do see a measurable increase in how these rookies are being used. And as you also pointed out, they really need to find a second pass catcher. I mean, right now they need to find a first pass catcher. It's not a foregone conclusion.
First receiver, Cade Otton has been fine, to be honest. He's okay. But Cade Otton, too, you're seeing the limits of, you can't have a tight end being your wide receiver 1. We've hit the limits of that. So they need 2 receivers, so bad.
Exactly. The desperation with which they need the receiver and the fact that he's the one to be next man up, there are worse holds. But I don't think he's a 12-team standard league hold.
Probably the final question here for Danny. He's just wondering about T. Higgins. Should he come back? Will we starting George Pickens and Terry McLaurin over him? And just what are realistic expectations for T. Higgins on a second week-to-week injury of the year? I still consider day-to-day heading into week 11. I mean, do we have anything positive to say on T. Higgins? I mean, I guess he's in a good offense that's paired with a bad defense. Will he be a wide receiver 2 still when he comes back, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was seeing the football a ton. Like I said earlier, he was quite literally seeing more targets and more air yards than Jamar Chase. And while I think even at that point, we could have predicted that will not hold, we have eyes. We can say that one player is better than the other, and players who are better typically get more. But with that being said, he was doing a really good job at earning volume on an offense that is really humming right now in his absence. What's going on there? Impossible to say. But I think I would rank him basically where I was with maybe a 1 week probation. Actually 100% with a 1 week probation.
This is for real the last question. Trade BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., and Roshan Johnson for DK Metcalf and Jonathan Brooks. Yes.
Yeah, windmill.
Yeah, the windmill dunk, except on the yes there. And thank you so much for all your questions tonight. We hope Tyreek Hill finds you what you're looking for on Monday Night Football. We had a lot of people asking about that. It's fair. I hope Devin Achane, to be frank, steals all Tyreek Hill's targets. Tyreek means
God willing, brother.
God willing. And just thank you so much for joining us. Check out Kyle's waiver wired column. Check out my rankings later in the week. Check out my podcast on Tuesday with Denny. Kyle back on Thursday to break down the entire Week 11 slate. We're going to be doing it all week in every form on Rotoworld.com. So for Kyle and Pat, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back later.